My name is Harold Whitmore. I am 68 years old, and I am sitting at table 17 right next to a secondary speaker that hums and crackles, in the middle of a wedding that seems designed to make people like me feel out of place. I once thought that when my son got married, I would stand up, share a few old memories, offer a sincere toast, then pull him into my arms the way my father once pulled me into his at my own wedding. But here, among the gold-tinted decor and ivory tablecloths, it seems that no one expects that to happen. 1 week before the wedding, during the role assignment and schedule meeting at the bride's family estate, Mr. Langford, the bride's father, spoke to me in a tone both polite and impossible to refuse. "Mr. Whitmore, there will be many delegates from the banking, political, and media circles. We have invited several notable figures to speak on behalf of both families. Perhaps you might simply sit back, enjoy the party, and not worry about anything significant." I smiled, not because the suggestion pleased me, but because I had been waiting for exactly this kind of moment to start seeing what people really thought of me. I nodded politely. "I understand. Thank you for your concern." But inside, I knew today would not be a day to sit still. The wedding was held at the Manor House, an old-style estate on the outskirts of Connecticut, rented in full for a price I overheard to be about $185,000. I contributed nothing to it. No one asked. I arrived on time wearing the same gray suit I had worn at the funeral of my wife, Aiko, 3 years earlier. I drove myself, parking in the staff area because the guest parking was already filled with luxury cars bearing New York plates. No one greeted me except a waiter, who led me to table 17. I knew the number because I counted each table from the entrance. Mine was tucked behind a round pillar in a chandelier. I sat next to Clarissa's distant aunt, nearly 90 years old and dozing through the event, and a young couple who were friends of the bride. No one knew who I was. No one asked. I poured myself a glass of lemonade. Quietly, from where I sat, I could see Ethan, my son, standing beside the bride, Clarissa, in the garden. They both looked as if they had stepped out of a magazine photo. Ethan smiled, but it was the kind of smile I had seen grow distant for months now. A smile with nothing left of Vermont, of his mother, or of me. I once thought Ethan would never change, that no matter where he worked, who he loved, or how wealthy he became, he would remember growing up in our 3-bedroom cabin, remember the nights we repaired the roof together in the snow, remember his mother's ramen made from chicken broth when payday was still days away. But clearly, money does not need to belong to you to change you. It only needs to be near you. Ethan once told me, "I will never forget who you are, Dad." Yet here I am at table 17 and he has not looked back even once. Clarissa once told me, during the only dinner she had at my house, "I truly admire you, doing manual work and still carrying yourself with such dignity. That is rare." I smiled and replied, "Thank you. But my hands are not what need to keep dignity. My head is the part worth paying attention to." She laughed as if I had said something delightfully philosophical, then turned to text someone. The ceremony began. Music played. Patricia Langford, the bride's mother, spoke on behalf of her family. Her speech was long, full of ornate words like heritage, family honor, community standing. No one mentioned the groom's family. Not a word about mine. No one suggested I take the stage. I took a final sip of my drink. Then I quietly pulled from my inside jacket pocket a brown envelope containing the bank statement of Aiko, my late wife, who had quietly turned an initial $42,000 in savings into $99 million over 25 years of silent investing under her maiden name. I knew my moment had not yet come, but it would not be far off. Because today I was not here to sit still. I was here to see who truly respected me when they thought I had nothing at all. I met Aiko Nakamura in 1980 at an autumn fair at a suburban high school. At the time, I was fixing the gym's vending machine, my hands covered in grease, while she was selling tickets to raise funds for the English class. She bowed slightly to thank me in a voice as light as the wind. Her eyes lowered, then looked up and asked if I would like a raffle ticket. The grand prize was a down comforter. I bought 3 tickets. I did not win anything, but I won Aiko. We married a year later. There was no big wedding, no honeymoon. Just a small ceremony at a wooden church beside a grove of maple trees, where I placed a bunch of white daisies in her hair. Aiko had come to America at 17, lived with her aunt in Vermont, and studied while working. She was an accountant for the local elementary school, and I repaired refrigeration systems for government buildings and public facilities. We lived in a three-bedroom wooden house with cracked tile floors, a tin roof, and windows that let in the winter draft. Whenever we had money, I fixed it bit by bit. The living room floorboards were replaced by me and my son Ethan during the winter when he was in fourth grade. The fireplace was old, though, but we only needed it to be warm, not beautiful. Aiko was skilled at simple cooking. Her signature dish was rice with a raw egg, soy sauce, and seaweed. Cheap, but each time I ate it, I felt at peace. She was not talkative, but she remembered everything. On the 12th of every month, she set aside $200 to deposit into savings. Whenever I asked about it, she would just smile and say, "Let me handle the savings. You take care of today." We were not rich, but we never lacked anything truly necessary. When Ethan was born, I thought my life was complete. Being a father was never easy, but to me, it was the most worthwhile thing I had ever done. I taught him how to hammer a nail, change a fuse, and wash a car without wasting water. Every birthday, I made him something by hand. A little wooden cart, a study desk, then a bookshelf. One year, I drew a map of Vermont on his bedroom wall with colored chalk. Ethan used to call me his hero. I never asked why. I only knew that whenever he said it, I would pretend to adjust my shirt cuff to hide the tightness in my throat. Ethan did well in school. Aiko would stay up until 2 in the morning to help him with advanced math by translating Japanese textbooks into English because they were half the price. I took on more overtime. Any school building in the area that needed electrical upgrades, I was there. For him, for the future. We never took out loans for Ethan's college tuition. Every extra dollar was stored carefully, one by one. I remember the day we took him to Boston for move-in. Aiko took a photo of the three of us in front of his dorm. That photo still sits on her altar, next to the bonsai tree she planted the first year she moved in with me. Then Ethan graduated. He got a job at an investment bank in New York. Things began to change. The calls became shorter, the questions less frequent. He started using terms I did not understand. IPO, private equity, hedge fund. Aiko still smiled while listening to him, still made miso soup whenever he visited, but her eyes carried a quietness they had not before. When Ethan was 28, he brought Clarissa home. She was beautiful, fair-skinned, with a perfect social smile and a voice so polished I could not detect any real personality. She brought a bottle of expensive French wine and let her eyes sweep over our old kitchen before sitting down. After they left, Aiko asked me one question. "Are you truly happy, Harold?" I said, "I do not know, but he seems to be trying to belong to a world I cannot see myself in." 2 years later, Aiko was diagnosed with late-stage leukemia. She did not talk much. She simply organized her papers, cleaned the cupboards, and cut all the flowers in the garden to dry for tea. One night, as I made tea for her, she held my hand, ran her fingers over my calluses, and said, "You have lived more honorably than 100 rich men." I sat there saying nothing, holding her hand until morning. She passed away on a spring morning. The house became too quiet. I walked past our bedroom that still smelled of her shampoo, past the balcony where the bonsai leaves had dried, and down to the basement, out of habit, to check the old pipes. When I saw the metal box behind the water heater, sealed with tape, labeled in her handwriting, "Harold, when I am gone," I carried it out and placed it on the wooden table. Inside was a thick investment plan titled Nakamura Aiko, 6 property deeds for small houses in Vermont, Massachusetts, and Oregon. A record of investment dividends since 1995. A handwritten letter, her script soft and small. "I did not tell you, not because I feared you would change, but because I knew if you knew, you would stop me. I needed to do this. I turned the $42,000 you gave me when we first married into something bigger, so that when you were alone, you could live without worry. But I knew if I told you early, you would not let me. You can use this money for anything you want. But if you ask me, I only wish for you to keep living and to keep being kind as you have always been." I counted. The estimated total value was $99,245,003. I did not cry. I just sat there, the letter still in my hand, looking at the dried bonsai next to the table. Aiko had trusted me enough to keep an entire fortune hidden so that I would not lose what mattered more, myself. I had lost my wife, lost the son who once called me his hero, but I still had one thing left, choice, and I knew that I would not throw money around to buy prestige. I would use it at the right time, in the right way, the moment when silence would no longer be enough. And that day would be my son's wedding day. I spent 3 nights after opening the metal box reading every single document over and over. Every figure, every chart, every line of description seemed to speak a language I had never known. I had never invested in stocks, never set foot in any bank larger than the small-town branch where I had made my monthly deposits for 3 decades. But Aiko was different. She had done it quietly, steadily, and with remarkable intelligence. Inside the box were 7 property files, stretching from Vermont to Oregon. Most were small houses bought during market downturns, possibly from the bonus I had given her in 2002 after completing the Bear Hospital project. I could not recall exactly, but somehow every dollar I had ever handed her had been kept. There was a spiral notebook, its coil rusted, with small notes inside. Do not use high interest rates to chase fast gains. Let the market be your friend, not your race. 2020. Sell agricultural company shares before September. Then move into Massachusetts municipal bonds. Do not let Harold know, not to hide, but to protect his peace. I closed the notebook and kept it in my private drawer, next to the things I valued most in my life. My father's watch, a piece of wood Ethan once carved with the words Dad's Shop, and a fabric hair clip Aiko used to wear. I arranged to meet Michael Reese, a retired lawyer living in the suburbs of Montpelier, the man who had helped me draft my will in 1994. Michael looked over the papers, then looked at me. What do you plan to do with all this? I did not answer immediately. After a long pause, I said, I want to confirm that all of this is real and legal. He nodded. 3 days later, he returned with a new statement. Total value, $99,243,871, including stocks and ETF portfolio, $51 million, real estate appraisal, $28 million, bond yields and savings, $15 million, anonymous trust fund under state law, $5 million. All assets were in Aiko Nakamura's name or had been transferred directly to me under prior agreements. She really was extraordinary, Michael said. I stayed silent. Inside me was a mixture of awe, gratitude, and a sharpness like a knife cut across my chest without bleeding. Aiko had lived quietly, like any woman at her kitchen counter, yet in truth she held a fortune even New York tycoons would struggle to match. Not because of the amount, but because of the way she lived with it. I did not spend a dime. I did not change my car. I did not move. I still fixed neighbors' pipes when they called. I still bought discounted shoes from the local store. Only one thing changed. I started watching more closely. Because I realized if money changes how people see you, I needed to know who was looking at me with honest eyes. And more than anything, I wanted to know what my son Ethan would choose when he thought his father had nothing at all. 2 months later, Ethan called. His voice was excited. Dad, I have good news. I am going to propose to Clarissa. I could hear the laugh in his voice, the same as when he was a boy, riding his bike with no hands for the first time. She has said yes, yes, I am going to propose where we first met. Central Park, I asked. And you are sure, absolutely sure, Dad. Clarissa is intelligent, determined. She has ambition, like Mom. And she is gentle too, but in a city way. I smiled. No objections, no praise. Just said, then that is good. A week later, Ethan invited me to dinner with the Langford family, an official meeting where both sides meet before the wedding. I accepted. The Langford residence, a Greek revival mansion in the Upper East Side. Clarissa opened the door holding a glass of wine, her smile textbook perfect. I hope you do not find this place too different. I smiled lightly. As long as there is a chair to sit on, it is fine. That evening, I met Frederick Langford, the bride's father, and Patricia, a woman whose voice sounded trained for investment boardrooms. They asked what I did after retiring. I still do some repair work, houses, gardens. Ah, Frederick said, his tone laced with meaning. I like people who do not stay idle. Too much free time makes the mind sluggish, does it not? Patricia added, Clarissa always says Ethan's roots are very interesting. That is a very admirable trait. I did not ask how they defined interesting or admirable. I just nodded, waiting for them to continue. Ethan stayed mostly silent through dinner, occasionally nodding or smiling when Clarissa spoke about the pressures of choosing the right partner to fit into their world. I ate my steak slowly, listening like a hunter waiting for the first sound in the forest. And I heard it. These were people who judged others not by the heart they had, but by the shoes they wore. I left that house that night with a quiet decision. I would not let anyone at that wedding know who I was until they had shown me who they were. The following month, when the wedding invitations went out, I received a message from Clarissa. Uncle Harold, I want everything to be perfect for the wedding. If you need help with your suit or transportation, just tell the event planners. Do not hesitate. I replied, I am fine. Thank you. I ordered a suit from the old shop in Montpellier, the same one I wore at Aiko's funeral. I kept the original bank statement from the account Aiko left, under the name Nakamura Aiko, now valued at $47 million. I printed it, folded it carefully, and placed it in a slim leather envelope. I also printed Aiko's handwritten letter, scanned in full color, and made 3 extra copies. Everything went into the inside pocket of my suit. I had no intention of using them. Not immediately, but I wanted to be ready if my dignity was once again pushed aside because of the car I drove or the way I spoke without a polished accent. I arrived at the wedding 10 minutes early, sat exactly where I was placed, table 17, near the buzzing speaker, far from the center, no speech, no name on the slideshow, and I could see it clearly. This was a game, a test no one knew they were taking, and I was the only one holding the winning card. I once thought that if someone called me a blue-collar dad, at least it would be a way to define me by the life I had actually lived. But I was wrong. When Clarissa used that phrase during a bridal brunch with her friends and extended family, she was not just describing me by the color of my work shirt, she was placing me beneath her feet. We have to take a separate photo for Instagram, she said. The bride's side in light-colored dresses, and the groom's side, well, Ethan's dad, blue-collar dad, a nice rustic backdrop. Her voice was just loud enough, just layered enough, just disguised enough to pretend there was no malice. I was standing only a few steps away. She knew I could hear. She wanted me to hear. 1 week before the wedding, when the event plan was sent to everyone on the organizing team, I noticed the wedding reception speakers list had 3 names. Frederick Langford, the mayor of Stamford, and the CEO of Langford Capital. I was not on it. No invitation, no request, no line saying the groom's father will give thanks. I was not surprised, but it still hurt. I asked Ethan during a rare dinner together at a sandwich shop near Grand Central Station, so I will not be speaking at your wedding. Ethan hesitated, holding a glass of water he did not drink. That was arranged by the planners and Clarissa. Dad, there is a speech from the groom's side, but Clarissa wanted to keep it short so the guests wouldn't get bored. And besides, Mr. Langford is the main sponsor. And what do you think? He looked at me, eyes asking me to understand. I just want the wedding to be perfect. Perfect, I understood. Perfect meant moving a father who did not match the style to the sidelines, so the spotlight would only fall on those who live in the same social orbit. I drove back to Vermont that night. Snow was falling lightly, and I lit the gas heater to chase away the chill in the wooden house. Then I sat at my desk, turned on the printer, and printed the original statement for the investment account in the name of Aiko Nakamura, valued at $47,121,009. The property deeds for 5 houses in Burlington, Brookline, Bend, Eugene, and Brattleboro. The handwritten letter Aiko had left in the metal box, and a photo from Ethan's college graduation with Aiko hugging him from behind and me standing next to him, my hand on his shoulder. I folded everything, placed it in a brown leather envelope, then took it to the photocopy shop near the market. I asked my friend Sam Hendricks, an amateur wedding videographer, to record the entire ceremony and reception from the greetings to the speeches. I did not tell him to film it for me. I only said, if anything happens, I need to know exactly who said what. The pre-wedding dinner was held at the Langford Hall, a three-story mansion built in the style of Old England with a red carpet from the door to the tables, gold candles, white lavender arrangements, and live chamber music played beside a cello. I was placed at table 11, still far from the stage. The evening opened with nearly 8 minutes of Frederick Langford's speech. He spoke about the good fortune of Clarissa meeting Ethan, a young man raised with a serious working-class ethic. Then the mayor spoke about model families helping to connect different social circles. Finally, the investment director praised a bright future where traditional values meet modern culture. No one mentioned me. No one said I was the groom's father. No one asked if I wanted to speak. Clarissa came to shake my hand after the dinner. Uncle Harold, thank you for coming. Everyone really enjoyed tonight. I hope you felt comfortable. I smiled. Very comfortable. Like watching a royal performance. She did not catch the sarcasm, or pretended not to. On the way back to the hotel, I opened Aiko's letter again. If you are reading this, it means I am gone. I did not tell you, not because I did not trust you, but because I trusted you to be strong enough not to let money change you. I folded the letter, then pulled out my phone and texted Sam. The camera angle for the tables behind the stage needs to have full audio. Do not cut it. Then I turned off the lights and sat in the dark for a while. Tomorrow would be the wedding. Tomorrow would be the moment when all the masks had settled firmly into place, and I would sit there, silent, but no longer resigned. If I said I was not anticipating that moment, I would be lying. Not because I wanted to disrupt my son's wedding, but because I wanted to take silence to its absolute limit, to see how many people would still hold on to even a shred of respect when they thought I had nothing but the hands that once worked on air conditioners. The wedding took place outdoors in the green-carpeted garden behind the Langford estate. Tables were dressed in satin cloths, silver candles, and flower arrangements so tall they blocked the view of anyone seated. I was placed at table 17, near the secondary speaker, where the sound crackled and lagged half a beat. Next to me sat a couple who were distant friends of the bride's family, a forgetful aunt of Clarissa's, and an MBA student who had been in the same class as the bride. No one knew who I was. No one asked. No one stayed long. I ate a piece of pan-seared fish gone cold, drank water without ice, and waited. When the speeches began, the spotlight lit up the stage. Patricia Langford, in a deep purple gown, rose from the central table, holding her wine glass delicately between two fingers. Her voice carried the cadence of long practice. Today is truly a special day, not only because Clarissa and Ethan chose each other, but because our two families have found a connection that bridges differences in lifestyle. She paused, smiled, a proud smile, as if she had just signed a contract merging two major corporations. When Clarissa first brought Ethan home to meet us, I must admit, we had our reservations. She paused again, letting the words hang. Ethan comes from a small but humble family. A different world, simple, modest, but with a certain rustic quality. Light applause followed, a few lips curled in faint smiles. But we chose to open our arms, because sometimes a fresh breeze from simpler places can bring new life to a long-established foundation. Her last sentence came as her eyes swept toward me, table 17, as if to make sure I heard every word she had carefully laced in. Small, humble, simple. They called my son a quaint gift. They called my family something that needed lifting up. I set down my water glass, pushed back my chair. The creak of the legs made a few heads turn. I stood, adjusted my lapel, and walked. From table 17 to the stage was a long path. I walked past every table, every row of guests, every curious, puzzled glance, and the air began to tighten. Patricia faltered when she saw me approach. Frederick narrowed his eyes. Ethan shot to his feet. Clarissa froze, caught off guard. She had not imagined I would step out of the place I had been assigned, but I had not come here to sit still. I stepped onto the stage, asked for no microphone, needed no introduction. I simply stood there, looking at them all. I am sorry if I am interrupting. But I think perhaps someone from table 17 should be allowed to say something. The crowd fell silent. I am Harold Whitmore, the groom's father. The man invited to this celebration, seated in the corner of the garden, near the buzzing speaker, among those without the Langford name. Some looked down. Some pressed their lips in discomfort. I had thought I would sit quietly today, eat my portion, smile at the right moments, then drive back to Vermont, to the small wooden house where my wife died 3 years ago. But when I heard the word humble, when I heard the way people spoke about me, about my son, about the woman I loved more than my own life, I thought perhaps I should speak. I reached into my inside jacket pocket and pulled out a brown leather envelope. My wife's name was Aiko Nakamura. She was an immigrant, a school accountant, a woman who never raised her voice, but always did what was right. I took out her handwritten letter and opened it before the eyes of hundreds of guests. If you are reading this, it means I am gone. I did not tell you, not because I did not trust you, but because I trusted you to be strong enough not to let money change you. I have invested from our wedding savings for 25 years. I did not want you to know, because I knew you would stop me. I only hope if one day you are left alone, you will not live without freedom simply because you lack money. I folded the letter, took out the bank statement with 3 lines printed clearly. Nakamura Aiko, trust account, balance, $99,243,871.52. I looked up. I have kept silent for 3 years. I have not told Ethan. I have not told anyone. I have not changed cars, not moved house, not changed my shoes, not raised my voice. I did this not to pretend to be poor, but to see who among these people would still keep their respect when they thought I had nothing. I looked at Clarissa. You once called me blue-collar dad, with mockery in your voice, as if labor was a class to be erased when stepping into nobility. I looked at Patricia. You called my family small, simple, a strange breeze. Yet you never asked how I have lived, how I lost my wife, how I raised my son into the man your daughter chose. I looked at Ethan. You once called me your hero. Yet today you stayed silent when they placed me at the farthest table, when they used ornate language to humiliate me politely. Ethan's eyes welled, but he said nothing. I returned the papers to the envelope, took out another sheet, the draft for the Aiko Nakamura Foundation I had prepared with my lawyer. My wife wanted this part of her estate to fund scholarships for immigrant children, working-class students, bright kids who were not born into houses with Bentleys parked outside. I placed the paper on the central table. If my son is brave enough, he will continue this. If not, I will do it alone. I gave a small bow, then walked away. Not hurried, but certain. No one stopped me. There was only silence. Heavy, deep, and bitter. And behind me that wedding, so expensive it should have been able to buy affection, began to crumble. I did not look back. Not when Clarissa burst into tears on the lawn like an actress who had not memorized her lines. Not when Patricia Langford stood frozen by the main table, her lips stiff as wax on the rim of a crystal glass. I stepped out from the rows of chairs, through the flowered archway, past the string lights and the white rose trellis swaying in the afternoon wind. Only when the sound of hurried footsteps and a disordered voice came from behind did I stop. Mr. Whitmore, please wait. Frederick Langford, head of the family, master of this place. The man who had patted me on the shoulder 3 times during the reception as if I were an old gardener invited to join the feast. I think there may have been a misunderstanding, he said, striding toward me, forcing his businesslike smile back into place. I truly didn't know about that, Fortune. If I had, You would have said seat him at table 3 instead of table 17, I asked without smiling. He froze. A beat of silence. Then he tilted on his head, his tone shifting. I won't deny there was a mistake, but we're all adults, aren't we? If you think about the future, I'm willing to discuss a partnership, meaning we have an investment fund, Langford Capital, a leader in real estate and green tech. If you're interested, we could build a sustainable legacy together. I looked at him, at the way his eyes kept flicking to the brown leather envelope in my hand. as if my value had just been recalculated on some market scale. "You think I spoke up to be bought?" I asked softly. "No, no. I think you're a man who can see far ahead, far enough to forget how people treated me when they thought I had nothing." He said nothing. I pulled a sheet of paper from the envelope. Not a bank statement. The draft for the Aiko Nakamura Foundation. My wife wanted this money to help immigrant children, children of color, or those from poverty. People with talent, but no one to open the door for them. If your idea of a sustainable legacy fits that, then join in, but I won't fund your dream just to buy back respect that should never have been lost. I placed the paper in his hand, then turned away. By the time I reached the parking lot, the day had begun to cast its long shadows, and Ethan caught up. No tuxedo jacket, tie loosened, hair disheveled, eyes stormed over. "Dad?" I stopped. Opened the car door, did not get in. "Dad, why? Why didn't you say anything? You kept it from me." I looked at him. His eyes were as red as when he was a boy bullied at school. But now no one had bullied him. He had chosen silence. And now, when everything had collapsed, he called it betrayal. "You feel betrayed?" I asked. "You betrayed something bigger than money, your self-respect. You don't understand. I just wanted the wedding to be perfect. No trouble, no conflict. You think letting people treat your father like a retired servant is how you keep things perfect," I cut in. "Each time they spoke of your family in polished words but meant contempt, where were you? Each time they said, 'Seat him far away. Don't let him speak.' What did you say?" Ethan lowered his head, said nothing. I opened the bag in the car, took out 2 documents. One was a statement from the lawyer's office, titled clearly, "The Aiko Nakamura Foundation. Purpose: full-ride scholarships for underrepresented high school students in Vermont." The other was Aiko's original letter. I handed both to Ethan, not with anger, but with hope. "You're still my son, and your mother loved you more than anything in this world. But if you can't see what's wrong in how they treated me, then you're living into the wrong world. I don't know why I let it go so far. I just wanted their acceptance. I thought, if I lived like them, they'd respect me." "You were wrong," I said. "People like them only respect what they're afraid to lose. And they're not afraid of you. They think they can shape you into their mold. I don't want that. I don't want to lose you." His voice cracked. I placed my hand on his shoulder. Not forgiveness, but to let him know he still had a chance. "I'm leaving tonight," I said. "Back to Vermont. I have an old house, a clear plan, a vision your mother left behind, and I'll begin it. Alone." Ethan gripped the papers tightly. "I want in," he said. "Not for the money, but because if I don't do this, I'm not myself anymore." I nodded. "Good, but don't just tell me. Tell your wife, tell her family, and tell yourself." I did not return to the wedding. But I heard that night Clarissa left early. Patricia slipped out midway. Frederick never mentioned his partnership fund again. The next morning, Ethan called. "Dad, I just returned the entire wedding reception set up to the Langford side. I'll host a small gathering in Vermont, if you'll agree. No prestigious guests, no speeches. Just, I want to start again, from where I lost my way." I didn't answer right away. I looked up at the small table where Aiko's photo sat, beside a bowl of lotus tea and a bonsai tree, pushing out new buds. Finally, I said, "All right, but only if you truly want to begin again. Not to make amends, but because you understand the worth of what was once dismissed." I did not accept an apology from the Langfords. Not because I was angry, but because I did not see anything that deserved to be called an apology. An apology is when someone understands they were wrong. Frederick Langford only kept silent after my speech, then had someone send an expensive bottle of wine along with a handwritten card that read, "Hope we can continue as gentlemen." I sent the wine back, with no note. "I am not a gentleman. I am Harold Whitmore, a man who has lived his whole life with his own 2 hands, and I only keep walking when I can still look myself in the mirror." I returned to Vermont on a cool afternoon in late April. The sun was thin, and new buds had just begun to push their heads through the rock and soil. The old wooden house had been through a long winter without an owner. The porch had a few wooden boards loose, the windows were dulled by dust, and the fence had a missing slat. I stood on the steps, my hand on the wooden door handle I had known for 30 years, and thought, it is time to start again. From the place once considered small and plain, I did not hire an architect, only called Sam Hendricks to help for a few days. Each day I fixed a part, replaced the cracked glass with an old pane kept in the shed, painted the walls with leftover paint Ethan had brought home back in high school. I cleared out Aiko's old study, the small room facing the backyard, where she used to sit and compare public school payroll sheets by hand, printed double-sided. The desk still had a purple ink stain from a bottle spilled years ago. I left it there. I hung back our wedding photo. Aiko in an ivory kimono, her hair neatly pinned, and me in a wrinkled suit bought from the Goodwill thrift store, my collar slightly crooked, but my eyes brighter than the sun that day. I placed the frame exactly where she used to keep her computer. Below it was a wooden plaque, hand-carved with the words, the Aiko Foundation, for the children who carry dreams bigger than their language. 3 weeks later, the children began to arrive. There was no advertisement. Just a few people at the market who heard Mr. Whitmore was opening free English classes for the children of immigrant laborers. Then one told another. Within the first month, I had 17 children. 8 from Guatemala, 4 from Cambodia, 5 from Vietnam, Laos, Korea, and Japan. All between 10 and 14 years old, speaking English more with their eyes than their words. I taught each of them pronunciation by pointing to things in the old kitchen. Spoon, pan, door, light. One child wrote daddy in bold letters, then quietly showed me. I did not ask where his father was, I just nodded. Every afternoon I made peanut butter sandwiches and orange slices. Each week I gave them a comic book to read, then asked them to draw what they understood. One drew the wooden house with the door open. Another drew me with a smile too big for my face. I did not correct their drawings. I pinned each one to the living room wall, which had now become the mini library of the Aiko Foundation. One day I found an old tin box while cleaning the shed. Inside were English assignments Aiko had once graded for her students, alongside a few cards they had given her, written in careful letters. Thank you, Mrs. Whitmore. You made me believe I could write. I took those cards out, framed them, and placed them next to the classroom bulletin board. Then I turned on the light. Not a crystal chandelier like at the Langford wedding, just a string of warm yellow bulbs hanging across the ceiling, shining down on the rough wooden table where the children were hunched over, trying to write the word future. In the evening, I sat in the armchair by Aiko's memorial corner, as I always did every Sunday. The wedding photo was still there. The lotus tea still carried its soft scent, and I whispered as if she were listening, Aiko, maybe you were right. People do not have to be rich to be respected. But if we have money, we should use it to restore faith in what is good. I never retaliated against anyone. No lawsuits, no insults, no display. I only did what Aiko left behind. A wooden house, a plaque, a new generation learning how to call hope by the language this world speaks. On a June morning when the cherry blossoms in the backyard had just fallen and the sky began to turn steadily sunny, Ethan came. I was sitting under the porch holding a small brush, painting the final coat on the sign that read Aiko Foundation. The sound of a car stopping nearby was slow and hesitant, as if the driver was not yet ready to step out. Ethan wore a gray shirt and old dressed on, no tie, none of the polish he had in his wedding photos. He walked slowly, hat in hand, and stopped at the front steps, the exact spot where years ago he had run home to proudly announce his first A in math. I did not invite him in. I only looked up. Ethan looked at me and bowed deeply. I am sorry, Dad. The wind passed through. The silence between father and son grew heavier. There were no tears, no pleas, only a man who had learned to speak the truth by standing still. I looked at him for a moment, then asked a single question. What do you plan to name your son? Ethan looked up, silent, then hesitated. We were thinking of Aiko, if it is a girl, and if it is a boy, maybe Alan, or Harold, if you do not mind. I nodded, said nothing more. Did not cry, did not forgive, did not punish, just a nod, as if to acknowledge that the boy had traveled far and chosen on his own to return to the right place. Ethan did not stay long. He went to visit his mother's grave, stood before the wedding photo hanging on the wall, touched the corner of the table where his mother used to write letters by hand, and before leaving, he placed a small envelope on the study desk. I did not open it right away. Only after sunset did I pick it up, sit in the armchair beside Aiko's picture, and read. In the letter, Ethan wrote, "Dad, maybe it is not that I did not love you. It is that I let too many things define a person's worth. I used to think status was what allowed me to protect the people I loved. But I was wrong. Mom protected you by holding on to trust. And you protected me by not needing to prove what you had. I hope the child about to be born will learn this from its own grandfather." I folded the letter, did not cry, did not smile, just placed it next to the letter Aiko left years ago as part of something still continuing. The next day, the children came in greater numbers than usual. One pulled me aside, pointed to the sign, and asked, "Mr. Harold, who is this name? Is it your wife?" I nodded. Yes, her name was Aiko, and she believed that when you are not heard through words, you let actions speak for you. The child thought for a moment, then grinned. "So now we are hearing her by learning, right?" I looked into that gaze. Clear, without doubt, without judgment. "That is right," I said, "and when you grow up, you will understand why that matters. I do not live to change the world, nor do I need recognition. I live to hold on to something people often lose too easily: respect, even when they think they are above someone else. Respect does not come from money, nor from a business card or a speech on stage. It comes from how you act when you know you could turn the tables, but choose not to, just to keep a part of the old self alive in someone else. And if someone asked me what my final words to the next generation would be, I would not write a long letter, nor leave a 3-page will. I would leave only one line beneath that wooden plaque next to Aiko's name, where the morning light shines into the doorway. Sometimes the only thing that can hold a person's heart is the silence of someone who knows exactly what they have. If you believe silence also has power, subscribe to the channel to hear more stories like Harold's.